Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's giant puffy polka dot bow tutorial, where I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple and effective puffy polka dot bow. The things that you'll need for today's tutorial: I've got a ruler, a fondant rolling pin and a paintbrush. I've got a little bit of water. I've got a round piping tip and I'm really just using that as a circle cutter for my polka dots today. So if you've got a really small set of circle cutters, that's great. Otherwise, have a think about what you've got at home, a pen lid or a piping tip or something like that. I've got some fondant in pink and also white. I've got a spare ziploc bag. I've got some cornflour in a cornflour shaker, and I've also got just a pizza cutter. You can use a knife here, but I prefer the neat lines of a pizza cutter. You're also going to need just a couple of clean, dry tissues. So let's get started. So the first thing that you want to do here is you want to roll out your pink fondant. Now, put down a bit of cornflour just so that it doesn't stick to your surface. And you want to roll this out not too thin to begin with. So you don't want it to be too thick, but we're not going for paper thin just yet because we're going to add some polka dots before we roll it again. And we want to make sure that we've got a good thickness to add those polka dots into. For your bow, you're sort of looking for like a long rectangle shape for your fondant. All right, so my fondant's rolled out about that thick. It's not super thin just yet. Pop that off to the side and work quite quickly here because your pink fondant will start to dry out. But you want to roll out your white fondant to about the same thickness. All right, now from your white fondant, you want to use your circle cutter or your piping tip just to cut out a couple of those little circle shapes and a little dab of water just in the center on the back, not all the way to the edges. You want it to stick down to that fondant, but you don't want that water seeping out the sides or it's going to cause stickiness when you roll it out. So just a little dot in the center. You'll also notice that I'm just resting that spare Ziploc bag on top of the fondant. That's really just to keep it from drying out. You can put a little piece of wax paper or a little piece of plastic wrap. So once all of your little polka dot shapes are on there, you want to take your rolling pin. Now this is where you can control the spread and the size and the shape of your polka dot. So you just want to roll in one direction, turn your fondant and roll in the other direction. And that helps you to control that they're stretching a little bit this way and a little bit that way. You'll see by rolling it this way, we've got a really nice flush finish, so you don't have little polka dots sticking up out of your bow. You've actually got them blended right into that fondant. This is a really nice technique for just polka dot cupcake toppers as well. All right, that fondant is now lovely and thin and perfect for making a puffy bow. So working quickly because your fondant's now been out for a little while, I'm going to use my ruler here just to keep my nice, neat, straight edge. So I'm going to come down one side. You see why I love that pizza cutter for that nice, neat cut? And I want my bow to be a little bit thinner than the actual piece of fondant that I cut. So I want my bow to be about that thick. So I'm going to cut my fondant out about here so that I've got a little bit of room to roll over some little lips to add extra puff to our puffy bow. Perfect. I'm also going to cut another strip here, just a little bit thinner. And this is going to be for the bow's tails and also for the center. Neatening off my ends so that I've got two really nice rectangles. Now this bow, you could make this any size you like, but basically your finished bow is going to be half the length of whatever you've chosen. So this one here is nearly 9 inches. That's going to be about a 4.5 inch bow when it's finished. Make sure that you don't have a lot of cornflour on the bench now and flip your bow over. And then you want to take just a very, very small amount of water and just run it up one edge and then the other edge. Now, using your fingers and just the tips of your fingers here, just curl over the very, very top couple of millimeters of that bow. This gives you a really, really nice, neat top and bottom edge, and it also adds to the kind of puffy effect of the bow. All right, you want to take your two clean tissues now, and you want to just fold them. I find it easiest just to fold them in half, and then into quarters, and then in half again, and then to kind of just roll them up. So you've got like a little bit of a sausagey shape. And then you're going to take a little bit more of that water, place it right in the center, a generous amount in the center here, and then put your tissue in and roll your fondant over it. Don't stick that all the way down just yet because we want to make sure that the two sides of our bow are even before we go sticking them down really, really nicely and firmly to that wet center. Once again, tissue in and roll over. Perfect. So looking at my bow, I'm happy they're both pretty even. Once I'm happy they're even, I'm just going to use my fingers just to push down in the center to make sure that I'm adhering that top fondant to that little wet center fondant. And then we're going to take a section of our center, or our center and our tails, and cut it off. I've gone with a piece just a little bit wider than the width of my bow. Flip it over again so the polka dots are at the front, and water on the back, all over that back section. And then you want to lift your bow up, using those tissues is best, and place it down. Now you can see there, it almost looks like our center is going to be a fraction small, but this is where the puff comes into our bow. So you want to grab your fingers here and just pinch both halves and we're actually going to pinch this bow together. So as you pinch at the back, all four sides will sort of come together, and you'll almost be fanning it out a little bit, but it gives you that really nice, neat, tight center to the bow. Perfect. Now I find making these bows about 12 to 24 hours in advance of wanting to use them is always great because it allows them to dry out and to stand up on their own merit. But with the little tails that you often will see on the cakes and on the cupcakes for your bow, you don't want them to dry out. You want them to be flexible, kind of like ribbons, so that when you put them on your cake, you can position them hanging over the side. I always make these at the same time, particularly with the polka dots. So you can just make that one big piece of polka dot, but just cut your remaining rectangle in half, cut in a couple of just rough little tails at the bottom to give us a couple of little points, like so. And then you want to store those in a ziploc bag. Let any air out and seal it up. That's going to keep those tails nice and soft and pliable so that your bow becomes nice and firm and can hold its own weight. And your little tails are still really nice and soft and pliable, and you can move them around and maneuver them when you stick this on your cake. To stick all of your parts together, you can either use a little bit of melted white chocolate or you can use just that plain water. So you want to put a little bit of water on your cake, then your two tails, a little bit more water on the tails, and then your bow directly on top. You can see the puffy fondant bow used here a couple of different ways. We've got the polka dot version on our Minnie Mouse giant cupcake, which is absolutely adorable. And you can also see it here used on a wedding cake, downsized to use on some cupcakes. It's a really versatile fondant technique. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial, and as always, thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.